All right, class. So let's just jump right into it and finish Act 3 of Romeo and Juliet with scenes 3, 4, and 5. So we finished scene 2 when Juliet finally figures out that Romeo has killed Tybalt and all of the drama that ensues around that. So now we have a focus on Romeo in scene 3. Romeo is in this distressed time of need. He's being exiled, doesn't know where to go or who to go to. So who does Romeo go to during this time of need? Friar Lawrence, his buddy from earlier, who he asked for help to get married to Juliet with. So the friar tells Romeo, look, you've been exiled, right? And Romeo calls this a fate kind of worse than death. So taking a page from Juliet's book saying that he'd rather be dead than have to be banished. Is he just as bad as Juliet, right? So he does the classic stereotypical, he's sulking, thinks that no one could possibly understand the pain that he's in. He's so depressed, things like that. And Friar Lawrence is calling him sinful and mad and cowardly over his behavior and the way that he's acting right now, because he's not acting very chivalrous, or he's not acting like a man or a husband right now. Friar Lawrence says he's acting kind of like a child. There's a knock on the door, and obviously Romeo is supposed to be banished. The prince said if anyone sees his face again in Verona, he's going to be put to death. And so Friar Lawrence knows this and says, Romeo, someone's at the door, hide. And Romeo refuses to do so. He just sits on the floor and cries, literally, not displaying any sort of chivalry here. Finally, though, the person knocking says, it's the nurse. And Romeo's like, good, like, let her in or whatever. And Friar Lawrence is like, okay, the nurse isn't going to rat on Romeo. So the nurse comes in and tells Romeo about the pain he's caused Juliet, how upset she is, how you did this to her. And Romeo takes that very personally. In desperation, in a very serious and dramatic moment, Romeo holds a sword up to his chest, like kind of hinting that he's about to do something very drastic and very permanent. And Friar Lawrence, kind of in a panic, says to Romeo, and this is kind of long, but we'll go through it. Hold thy desperate hand. Art thou a man? Thy form cries out thou art. Thy tears are womanish. Thy wild acts denote the unreasonable fury of a beast. A pack of blessings lights up upon thy back. Happiness courts thee in her best array, but like a misbehaved and sullen wench thou poutest upon thy fortune and thy love. Take heed, for such die miserable. Go, get thee to thy love, as was decreed, ascend her chamber, hence and comfort her. But look thou stay not till the watch be set, for then thou canst not pass to Mantua, where thou shalt live, till we can find a time to blaze your marriage, reconcile your friends, beg pardon of the prince, and call thee back with 20,000 times more joy than thou wentst forth in lamentation. Go before, nurse, commend me to thy lady, and bid her hasten all the house to bed, which heavy sorrow makes them apt unto. Romeo is coming. So let's break this down. There's a couple things, key things that Friar Lawrence says here. So remember, Romeo is looking very desperate right now, holding a sword up to himself, threatening something very bad and very permanent. And Friar Lawrence says, hold thy desperate hand. Stop what you're about to do. Stop your desperate hand from moving. Art thou a man? He asks. Thy form cries that thou art. So he says, are you a man? You look like a man. Your form looks like a man. But thy tears are womanish. So you're not acting like one. You're acting like a woman. Thy wild acts denote the unreasonable fury of a beast, and compares Romeo to an animal here. So in these just 4 lines, he compares Romeo to a woman in a negative way, and a beast in a negative way, definitely reminding us of our time period here, sexist overtones. Women are the hysterical ones, right? You're a man, you're supposed to be strong and deal with this. Juliet's the one who should be crying right now, and she is. A pack of blessings lights upon thy back, he says. Here are the blessings. Juliet's alive, you're alive, that you're only exiled. You should be grateful. And happiness courts thee in her best array. So happiness is, should be what you feel. But like a mistempered and sullen wench, a gloomy young girl, you pout, thou poutest upon thy fortune and thy love, about your luck and your love. Take heed, for such die miserable. Be careful. Ungrateful people like you die miserable. Go, get thee to thy love, as was decreed, ascend her chamber, hence and comfort her. Go to Juliet, go to thy love, go to your love, go to her chamber, comfort her. She's not so happy right now. But look, thou stay not till the watch be set. Don't stay too late. For then thou canst not pass to Mantua. So at the very beginning of this story, I said it's going to take place in two places in Italy. One, Verona, which is where the main kind of setting of the story is. Verona is where they live now. Mantua is a nearby town in Italy where Romeo is being exiled to. So he says, go, but don't go too late or you won't be able to get to Mantua in time, and you'll live there until we can find a time to blaze your marriage, so to announce your marriage, reconcile your friends, so restore these friendly relations between you and the others, beg the pardon of the prince, so ask the prince for mercy, even though he's kind of made it very clear that he's not to be, asked for mercy here, and call thee back. Everyone will welcome you back happily with 1,000 times more joy, kind of a hyperbole there, than thou wentst forth in lamentation. So with much more joy than you went forth in mourning. So he talks to the nurse and says, go before, nurse, commend me to your lady, right? Say good things about me to Juliet. Better hasten quickly. All the house to bed, tell everyone to go to bed, in which with heavy sorrow makes them apt to do. They're already in mourning. They're already upset about Tybalt. I'm sure they'll do it. Romeo's coming. So Juliet, get prepared, get the house prepared. Romeo's coming. And that brings us to the end of scene 3. The nurse leaves. She's happy to pass on the news to Juliet. All parties are very relieved at Friar Lawrence's words. The nurse is happy. Friar Lawrence himself is satisfied that Romeo's now acting a bit more clear-headed. And it does beg the question, too. I had a question here. Exile in these days, is it perhaps a fate worse than death? I mean, we call Juliet and Romeo very dramatic about this, and perhaps they are acting very dramatic because of their age, but Romeo is so young. He's being cut off from his family, his friends. In times like this, there's no, telephones, or there's no video communication. So he is being cut off socially from his church, which is a huge deal, his family and friends, which is a huge deal, all the resources that come with living in his family. So he's essentially just moving to be homeless in a different place, which is scary stuff. And then do you think Friar Lawrence has a good plan here? Do you think that people will forgive Romeo once the marriage is announced and friendly relations are, reconciled, as he said, or is he being too optimistic? So food for thought questions here. So this all brings us now into scene 4, a very short scene, but one that everything kind of changes in. It's very dramatic. So the scene opens, Paris comes and visits Mr. and Mrs. Capulet, kind of offering his condolences, saying, so sorry for the loss of Tybalt. And then Paris just mentions Juliet. And Capulet, Mr. Capulet says, oh, she's been so sad, she's been very depressed lately, and we're left to ask as the readers, over what, right? Is she truly as upset about Tybalt as they think that she is, or is this about something else? And I think we know the answer to that. So Capulet suddenly just goes, hey, what day is it? I have a great plan, the perfect idea to cheer Juliet up, Paris. Right? And we remember Paris was the one at the very beginning who was interested in marrying Juliet and proposed this to Mr. Capulet. And he said, no, she's too young. This is now Mr. Capulet's idea to cheer Juliet up over the loss of her cousin. Monday. Haha, it's Monday. Well, Wednesday is too soon. Oh, Thursday let it be. Oh, Thursday, tell her, Juliet, that she shall be married to this noble earl, Paris. Will you be ready? Do you like this haste? We'll keep no great ado, a friend or two, for hark you, Tybalt being slain so late, it may be thought we held him carelessly, being our kinsman if we revel much. Therefore, we'll have some 6 friends, and there an end. But what say you to Thursday? So let that sink in there, and let's break down what exactly Mr. Capulet's brilliant idea to cheer Juliet up is. He says Monday. Haha. Well, Wednesday's too soon. Thursday, let it be. Oh, Thursday. So today's Monday. Wednesday's too soon for this. So we say on Thursday, she shall be married to Paris. Juliet is going to be married in the span of 3 days' time to cheer her up over Tybalt's death. Will you be ready? He asks Paris. Do you like this haste? Is this enough time? Is this too fast for you? we'll keep no great ado, a friend or two. It won't be a big wedding, right? He's not going to throw this big thing. For Hercule, Tybalt being slain so late, he says, we won't throw a big wedding because since Tybalt just died, it may be thought we held him carelessly, being our kinsman, if we revel much. So people might find it as disrespectful, might think that we didn't really care about Tybalt if we throw too big of a party, which is fair. Therefore, we'll have some half a dozen friends, and there an end. Small wedding. What say you to Thursday? How's that sound, Paris? And Paris here, he's all for it. He cannot be happier that he now gets his wish and that he gets to marry Juliet. Paris is happy. Capulet's happy that Paris is happy and tells his wife, go tell Juliet about the arrangement and have her prepare for the wedding. So just a reminder, this is Monday night and the wedding is going to be on Thursday. Why the father's sudden change of heart? We're left asking at the end of this scene. Does he think that the loss somehow matures her? If the excuse was she's too young just days ago when Paris asked to marry her the first time, is losing someone maturity enough to be able to get married, right? Should her father be making these huge decisions for her? Is this something that truly should cheer her up, right? What is he thinking? And how is this different from American culture when looking at this culture of the old-fashioned Italian culture? Very strange to us, seems like a very foreign thing, but very normal to them, it seems like, right? So it just makes us question, again, that's why we read literature, to see the changes in our times and to see how strange this truly is and how jarring it is. Again, it was a quick scene. That brings us to scene 5, the last scene of Act 3. So now we cut to Romeo and Juliet. So the night has been had, right? They spent it together. Romeo doesn't want to leave to flee to Mantua just yet. That was part of Friar Lawrence's plan because he doesn't want to leave Juliet. But Juliet's mom's coming soon. He can hear her coming up, so he knows he must leave. He goes out the window, and that very stereotypical scene that we see called from Romeo and Juliet in a lot of modern mediums. The mother comes in. Juliet goes, oh, I'm not well. I've spent my whole morning weeping. And we're asked, how does Lady Capulet think Juliet feels and why? She thinks that she feels some certain way about Tybalt, right? But that's not the true answer here. Lady Capulet says, you know what, Juliet, I understand. We're all upset about Tybalt. You know, Romeo is so evil for what he's done to Tybalt. And she says kind of crazy things about Romeo. She says, we will have vengeance for it. Fear thou not. Then weep no more. I'll send one in Mantua. So the mom knows where he's going. Where that same banished runagate doth live, shall give him such an unaccustomed dram that he shall soon keep Tybalt's company. And then, I hope, thou wilt be satisfied. So this is what Lady Capulet says that she's going to have done to Romeo, who killed Tybalt. We will have vengeance or revenge for it. Fear thou not. So do not fear, my dear Juliet. We will get revenge on Romeo for killing Tybalt. Then she says, you'll weep no more. You will stop crying after that. I know you will. I'll send someone to Mantua, like a, person who's hired, like a hitman, where that same banished renegade doth live. So that banished runner of Romeo, he ran away. That's where he lives now. And the person who I hired, the hitman, shall give him such an unaccustomed dram, a drink, hinting poison. This guy's going to poison Romeo, and he shall soon keep Tybalt's company. So if someone's keeping somebody who's dead company, he's hinting, or she's hinting, Lady Capulet is hinting that she's going to have Romeo killed. And then I hope thou wilt be satisfied. And then, my dear Juliet, after Romeo is dead, you'll be happy. So that brings us to here. It's very ironic what was said. It's called what kind of irony? Dramatic irony, when we, the audience, know something that the characters in the play do not, right? Lady Capulet does not know that it will not make Juliet happy at all. It will not make her satisfied that Romeo dies. It will, in fact, probably ruin her. This plan obviously does not please Juliet, but she can't tell why this plan doesn't please her, so there's a lot of dramatic tension on the stage. And then Lady Capulet goes, and you know what's going to make you feel better? Your lovely father planned this for you, a marriage between you and Paris. And I can just leave it to your imagination how you think Juliet responds to that. She goes, "That is horrible. That sounds disgusting. I would never want to do that." She hints, "I'd rather marry Romeo than marry Paris," in a very artful way. Lady Capulet, she's always been a fan of Paris. Her and the nurse were always like cheering on Paris over Romeo. You remember that? And Lady Capulet is in total shock. How dare? Like, why would you not want to marry Paris, right? All of a sudden, Mr. Capulet comes up and crazy stuff goes down. Mr. Capulet hears that Juliet has refused to marry Paris, and he's furious. Furious is an understatement. He is scary level in the way that he treats her. He calls her baggage. He calls her a disobedient wetch. He calls her sickly. He says, "You're a curse on our family." He hints he wants to hit her. He says his hand is itching to hit her because she refuses to marry Paris because he said so, and says that if she does not listen to him, this should say he will let her hang, beg, starve, and die on the streets. So he threatens to send her out homeless, to starve, to die, simply because she will not listen to him about what he wants her to do and marry Paris. We're seeing this and we're shocked, right, that Mr. Capulet is treating her like this. But we see kind of this type of power dynamic in that culture, in that society back then. That's how, the man, the alpha of the house, did treat his child, his daughter particularly. He had power over her, supreme power. So we're left asking, is this an abuse of power because of those parent-child roles, or is it because she's a woman? What do you think? Finally, we're brought to the very end of the scene, and we see that even the nurse does not support Juliet. She tells Juliet, "You know what? You should just marry Paris. Forget Romeo. Paris is so much better than Romeo." She calls him a dishclout compared to Paris, right? She's always been a Paris fan. She's always supported Paris first and foremost. And so she's like, "Juliet, cut your losses and run, right? This is the best option for you. You might as well." And Juliet just goes, "Okay, thank you, nurse, for the advice. Like, I'll keep that in mind. But right now, I'm going to go see Friar Lawrence." And with that, the curtain closes on Act 3, on Scene 5 of Act 3 in particular, but in Act 3 as a whole. And we have gotten much more drama and much more intrigue in this play, Romeo and Juliet. And now, what do I want you to do? So, with all of these crazy turns of events, I want to hear some of your thoughts, some of your perceptions about what's happened in Act 3. Remember, next week we'll learn Act 4 and Act 5 in hopefully a very similar fashion. Hopefully, I'll get your feedback by then and learn if this made sense to you and if you feel like you're still understanding the story. I know it's weird, not reading it and going into depth about everything together, but honestly, some of you probably like this format better, just being told what happens in the story. But that's half the fun of it, right? Is unlocking the meaning together and kind of discovering these things together, and me being able to see your reactions to it. But that's just me rambling. So what's your assignment? That's what you care about. What's your name, so you can get credit for today? In your opinion question, which do you think was the most surprising, dramatic, interesting scene in Act 3 of Romeo and Juliet? Totally your choice. It's an opinion question. Would you think it was Act 1 when Romeo, kills Tybalt and Tybalt kills Mercutio? Is it Act 2 when Juliet figures out the news and, is devastated about Romeo being exiled? Is it Act 3 when Romeo does that very dramatic thing with his own sword and threatens his very dramatic thing, and Friar Lawrence comes up with a plan? Is it Act 4 when it's officially decided that Paris is going to marry Juliet? Or is it Act 5 when Juliet refuses that engagement and is given a very scary ultimatum by her father and kind of learns the nurse has turned on her and she's going to Friar Lawrence? Just explain your answer to the question above. It can be short, it can be long. Just curious what you think is the most dramatic or interesting scene. Do you think Romeo is overreacting about his exile? Why is he getting so worked up and depressed over it, in your opinion? Do you think Friar Lawrence is right, that he can very easily restore people's faith in Romeo's good nature? Explain. What were your opinions about Mr. Capulet arranging a marriage for Juliet in just 3 days' time? Do you think it's crazy? Do you think it's kind of expected? Do you think it was normal back then enough that you're like, oh, those things happen, I guess? What would you say of the nurse, Mr. and Mrs. Capulet's treatment of Juliet in Scene 5? Does anyone seem to care about Juliet's feelings about this matter? And why do you think this is? If you don't think they care, why is that? And if they do care, why do you think they do? Um, do you agree with the nurse? At this point, should Juliet just cut her losses and marry Paris instead? Should she just say, you know what? This point, Romeo's gone, he's banished, I'll probably never see him again. Paris, my family's gonna approve of him immediately. I'm not gonna get kicked out on the streets for it, you know, he seems like an alright guy. I might as well just go for it. What do you think? Finally, I acknowledge that I will receive today an extra copy of today's notes via email. Yesterday, I didn't want to send them because we still had today to do, so they're coming to you today. If I have any questions, comments, concerns about today's material or any material, I can reach out to Miss Duquette. You know that by now. I've said it every single day. And finally, you know where to find this Google form. It's in the description of the video, as it has been. Any problems with anything, you know to let me know. Otherwise, have an awesome day, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully for Zoom. If not, I'll explain to you the alternative assignment. Have a good one. Bye.